Here's my ranking of every single movie I watched in April of 2025, including both old and new movies. Number 20, we got Fred 2: Night of the Living Fred. I never really liked this movie that much as a kid, but my friends forced me to watch it with them recently, and damn did it feel like it was never going to end despite the fact that it's only an hour and 20 minutes long. It's what you expect. It looks low budget, a lot of the jokes weren't funny, but admittedly, there's some fun to be had with it, I guess. At number 19, we got Kung Fu Panda 4. I'm making a big DreamWorks video soon, so I had to see this movie after avoiding it for so long, and it's even worse than I thought it was gonna be. It's a complete slap to the face for the fans and the franchise entirely, because the writers went out of their way to ruin the lore and somehow make the same mistakes as Kung Fu Panda 3 did while adding dozens of new ones alongside it. When the video comes out, you'll hear more about how badly I want to kill these writers. At number 18, we got a Minecraft movie, and let's be honest, the memes carried this movie so hard for it to not be in last place on this list. I saw it on opening weekend, so my crowd wasn't terrible, and if anything, I was the most annoying one there, because I shouted each line I could remember, even Kadoosh! But everything else besides the CGI, I guess, was absolutely terrible. The writing, the acting, the cinematography, the story, the characters, the chemistry between them, literally everything. At number 17, we got Alvin the Chipmunk's Shipwreck. Yes, I actually like this movie more than the movies below it on this list, because I grew up with this version of the Chipmunks, okay? So for what I expected, I got what I wanted. The nostalgia, the silly and outrageous moments, Ian and Dave, and surprisingly, there was a low-key good character arc with Alvin in this movie, but in the end, they completely ruined it for no reason, so yeah. Alvin! And at number 16, we got Kung Fu Panda 3. Hot take, this is where the downfall started with this franchise. It felt so off-putting to watch after seeing 1 and 2 only days prior, because everything besides the animation was completely worse in comparison. The villain was bland and his theme song played way too many times. The movie was so laser focused on comedy that the emotional moments barely got to shine, and in general, the story could have been so much better, especially with the most exciting moments happening at the end, but the tone of this movie failed to make those ending moments as impactful as the first one, and especially the second one. Yeah, this movie was kind of a letdown, not gonna lie. At number 15, we got The Accountant 2. I'm so confused how some fans of the original even like this one at all. The original was an intriguing character study with great action, serious drama, and some fun scenes here and there, while The Accountant 2 is just another silly action comedy that doesn't match the vibe of the original at all. And the same could be said for the main character in general. They literally assassinated him. They changed Chris from being a super autistic badass who had very unique fighting skills to a silly one who fights the same as any other action hero would in the most generic way possible. The movie is not nearly as funny as some people make it out to be, and it made me wish that The Accountant just stayed as a great one-off film. At number 14, we got The Room. The only reason why this movie is higher than the ones below it is because I knew exactly what to expect. I wanted to see some funny bad goodness, and that's exactly what I got. I laughed my ass off with the absurd drama, horrible dialogue, hilarious acting, the 20 billion sex scenes. I mean, come on, as an experience, this movie is fire. It's a cult classic for a reason.
Anything for my princess.
At number 13, I got B-Movie. I watched this movie a billion times before, and even on my 100th watch, I still like it a lot. Me and my friends were casually laughing throughout the entire film while also being impressed with how creative and interesting the B stuff was here. And in general, this movie was pretty chaotic in many aspects, like suing the human race for selling honey,
White man!
B9/11, shooting Winnie the Pooh, and of course, who could forget the horror story known as Ken's love life to Vanessa.
And he happens to be the nicest bee I've met in a long time.
Long time? What are you talking about? Are there other bugs in your life?
B-Movie just does such a great job at teaching kids how integral bees are for our everyday lives, and for that, I can confidently say that this movie is fire. Can't tell me otherwise.
I like it!
At number 12, I got Warfare, one of the very few actually good 2025 movies so far. Warfare definitely stands out amongst its genre because it depicts one scary-ass day during the Battle of Ramadi, and the fact that this movie was made by a soldier who was actually there that day using only his memories to recreate such a terrifying experience with the awesome direction from Alex Garland is unbelievable. However, it's not a movie I'm super passionate about because it's definitely boring at times, since a good chunk of it is just soldiers sitting around waiting for something to happen and being bored. But don't get me wrong, when it gets intense, it's genuinely scary. It's a one-time experience kind of film, and I really admire the work that's put into it. At number 11, I got How to Train Your Dragon 2. Surprisingly, this one was my least favorite out of all the Dragons movies, and the issue for me was that compared to the other films, this one was definitely the messiest. It felt unbalanced because the runtime was dominated by a bunch of exposition lectures that just didn't give enough time for the third act of the movie to be fully developed, because the villain Drago barely appeared until the final battles happened, which made them feel less exciting than they should have been. And because of those lectures, it gave the movie a very weird pace that just didn't feel right to me. And the only other negative I could think of for this movie was that the soundtrack was noticeably worse than the original. However, there's still a ton of emotional moments that this movie did get right, as a Dragons movie should, and despite the lecturing being too much, the lore that it does explore was still intriguing, so I still liked it, but the other two movies are just so much better in comparison that it kind of made me underwhelmed with this one. At number 10, I got The Accountant 1, and like I said before in the last part, I enjoyed this movie because it was an intriguing character study with brutal and unique action, interesting drama, with fun and funny moments. Compared to other action movies, this one definitely stands out with the main character story and its capabilities, but just knowing that damn sequel exists makes me want to kill myself. At number 9, I got Reservoir Dogs. I had fun with this movie for what it had, like the iconic scenes, crazy characters, interesting conversations, and that iconic Tarantino chaos. However, seeing this movie after Pulp Fiction made me realize how much of a precursor this was to that, because they share a lot of similarities, and clearly Pulp Fiction majorly improved upon those same elements that are here, so if I saw this earlier, I probably would have liked it a little bit more. Still great on its own though. At number 8, I got Sinners. Sinners was one of the most unique horror movies I've ever seen. The story it had to offer with all the hidden meanings to it made it feel very symbolic and thought-provoking. The characters were really engaging to watch, and it's insane how much chemistry both of Michael B. Jordan's characters had with each other, and the seamlessness made Sonic 3 look cheap. The action that was in the end of this movie along with the scary stuff were just amazing, and the only reason why this movie isn't higher on the list is because of the first hour being kind of boring to me. And it was only until the later half and the end credits that made me like it this much. At number 7, you're probably gonna hate me for this, Wayne's World. This movie is one of the funniest and most entertaining comedies I've ever seen. I loved the characters, the story was engaging, the jokes were hilarious, and the 90s vibe with some punk energy made it something I would love to re-experience over and over again. Wayne's World was just so much fun to watch that it still makes me consider if I should raise the score from a 9 to a 10. If you haven't seen it yet, please watch it. And at number 6, we got How to Train Your Dragon 3. This movie fixed exactly what was wrong with the second one to me by having a focused story that was emotional, the soundtrack was improved, and unlike Kung Fu Panda 3, it didn't change the tone at all from the prior movies to end off the trilogy. To go even beyond that, something's reached a new peak here with this movie. The villain Gremmel is the best villain we've ever seen in this whole franchise. The side characters, especially Astrid, are a hell of a lot more likable here. And since this is the newest one in the franchise, the animation is at its absolute best. Follow or subscribe to see the final part. At number 5, I got Face Off. Now, I may seem crazy for putting this movie so high, but I watched this with a friend late at night in a PlayStation party, and it blew our minds more than most movies do. Face Off was genuinely a roller coaster of a film, and the pacing made it feel like an actual adventure with how well it was fleshed out. It had everything. Super exaggerated action, epic set pieces, very crazy plot, great emotional moments, super funny characters, and much, much more. I was very impressed by how the bar was raised higher and higher as the movie went on, and the ending somehow landed perfectly without me feeling underwhelmed at all. Watching this movie was such an unforgettable experience that I want to relive it so bad. At number 4, I got Kung Fu Panda 1. This movie was so good that it made China jealous of American studios. It has a very awesome story that is super inspirational, great characters, amazingly choreographed action, funny moments, sad moments, peak Jack Black not reading a terrible script this time. This is one of the prime examples of peak DreamWorks movies. At number 3, I got The Incredibles. This one came out of nowhere because I'm not planning a Pixar video anytime soon. I've watched it on a whim with my friends, I liked it a lot, but it's one of those movies for me that I appreciate more after reflecting on it for days. The story about Mr. Incredible is something special. There's barely any superhero movies like it today. Seeing someone be so desperate to do what he loves, but at the same time dealing with the most dangerous people he's ever met, and just a whole bunch of other life struggles, it just makes it so relatable. I love the family drama, the action is great, the music is phenomenal, every emotional beat hits, and the villains are excellent. Syndrome is an amazing villain, and the insurance guy is so corrupt it's genuinely funny to hear him say the most insane things ever with the Toy Story Rex voice.
They're penetrating the bureaucracy!
Did I do something illegal? No. Are you saying we shouldn't help our customers?
The law requires that I answer no.
We're supposed to help people.
We're supposed to help our people! Starting with our stockholders, Bob! Who's helping them out, huh?
That man out there, he needs help.
Do not change the subject, Bob! We're discussing your
He
attitude.
is getting mugged.
Well, let's hope we don't cover him!
This movie was definitely incredible, pun intended. At number 2, it got How to Train Your Dragon 1. Damn, this movie was a masterpiece. It has so many beautiful moments that are iconic, like the flying scenes. The story is meaningful and epic. The relationship between Hiccup and Toothless is genuinely one of the best pairs of buds I've ever seen in a movie. The battles are grand, and just the experience of watching this movie is so mesmerizing that it gets me happy just talking about it. This is one of those very few movies that made me wonder how did the concept art look like for some of these scenes, because the cinematography is so top notch. I could only imagine seeing the sketch versions of them and putting them on a poster on my wall. The only flaw I could think of is how robotic Astrid was when she clearly had a crush on Hiccup, but that's something I completely forget about until I hear her talking again in the movie. This is such a masterpiece and the best Dragons movie easily. And finally, my number 1 movie of April of 2025 is Kung Fu Panda 2. My favorite DreamWorks movie of all time, ever since I first saw it back when it was new. The story from Kung Fu Panda 2 is one that I have connected with the most growing up, and it still remains the same to this day. I love the dark visuals and tone, I love seeing Po's character progression, I love the villain who is incredible and the most terrifying one in the series easily. It has one of my favorite endings I've ever seen in a movie. The Furious Five are at their absolute peak here, especially Tigress thanks to her relationship with Po. All of these elements blended together makes the perfect kids movie with real character growth. Seeing Po try to learn who he is and where he comes from, only to realize that his trauma doesn't define who he really is, and that leading him to find his inner peace, grow from his trauma, and save Kung Fu always meant so much to me, and even more so as a grown adult. I've seen this movie a billion times and I want to see it a billion times more. I love this movie so much, and that's exactly why it deserves to be at number 1. Thanks for watching, follow or subscribe for more content like this, and let's look forward to May. See you next time.